I have a story for you, a long story from my point of view, an adventure story from my point of view. So it has been an amazing adventure. My dad, Rodney G. Brown, was a chemist for DuPont. He patented something that you use every day. He invented the hot melt binding material for paperback books that replaced the animal glue that used to break on all your paperbacks. And my dad was a bon vivant. He romanced the idea of inventing. He gave me his copy of The Boy's Life of Edison, which was adulatory for Edison, and he read me 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. He made me want to have an apparatus like the Rouquayrol apparatus that had my name on it, the Brown apparatus. However, I disappointed him. I became a Steadicam operator. I became a folk singer. I leap ahead. He greeted the news that I was giving up my Navy scholarship and becoming a folk singer in silence. But part of the problem is what we were just talking about. The newsreels in the 40s and 50s mocked inventors, openly mocked the whole idea. They were immigrants, typically. They were exposed for all their foolishness and fecklessness. It didn't inspire me to be an inventor at all. It never occurred to me after that time. I must say, this one I like. I'd like to have that one, actually. But you know, I feel for these guys. I've been there. I've had contraptions that failed to work. I've been humiliated. My adventure story is full of very frightening events and things that don't work and gadgets that catch fire. Only my passion was the movies. And the movie business was full of contraptions by the time I got in. Oddly enough, that was a business that technically sat still for many years. To my great good fortune, when I got into the movie business, by reading all the movie books in the Philly Free Library, which effectively turned me into a 1940s filmmaker. I had a studio in a barn. I bought ancient equipment because my book said that's how you became a filmmaker. In fact, as the movies were on the verge of going on location, brilliantly in Philadelphia, suburbs, I equipped myself to be an ancient movie studio. And I had a dolly, because it's hard to remember back now, but in 1972, that was how you moved the camera. You either had a dolly or a crane or a camera car, and that was it. End of story. My 12-pound Bolex on that camera was the most absurd pin-headed thing you could possibly imagine. And my little film company, we broke our hearts schlepping that dolly around, and I confronted one of the great inventing possibilities, you might say, the most seductive, charming possibility of an invention in the trivial side of the 20th century, and that is, how do you disconnect the camera from the cameraman? How can you let somebody run upstairs, and the shot is smooth? And for somebody with my very basic education, that was a perfect challenge, because it's Newtonian physics, right? You can bring the sound up.
In the beginning, I went down to Canal Street, New York, and I bought aluminum. And I made this. Camera sits here, your hand holds here, and there's just a couple of weights top and bottom. And it's amazing how well this works. But of course, when you try and tilt up, the lens rises. That annoyed me. So I thought, well, maybe I can make it like a boom, a crane, so that it's a parallelogram. So that started a 3-month effort to make this ridiculous object. And lo and behold, it booms up and down, and the camera stays parallel, but of course now it won't pan and tilt independently, so.
And that crane weighed 70 pounds. That's not a success. By the way, that's not a Steadicam. Does anybody know what a Steadicam looks like? Have you seen them running around? Sure. It's the guy with the vest and the arm and the camera floating magically in front of him, right? Not that. That actually worked in an odd way, but we sent the strongest cameraman in the land home in a pillowcase after a day with what we were calling the Brown stabilizer, because I really was intent on getting my name on this thing. But what was it all about? It was about moving the camera. It was about making the camera do that three-dimensional trick. When a two-dimensional screen comes alive, when something moves. It's three-dimensional when it moves. It's very, very two-dimensional when it doesn't. So way before Avatar and all of that, it was something that I was intoxicated by. I'm a moving camera junkie. I love to push it through space. I love what it tells us. I do a little lecture at film schools and so on. And the moving camera explains things. It has an emotional content. It reveals things. It's a wonderful storytelling tool, particularly in a world where your protagonists are in motion frequently, right? Many thanks to the Planet Earth gents. These are wonderful examples of this. And of course, I had to get rid of that crane, that 70-pound crane, to bring this off. And I went into a motel for a week, and I intently studied my old drawings, and I ran around with broomsticks on my hands, scaring the maids, trying to understand what would be the very minimum object that would do this, because I had spent all my dough on this thing, and I had to get something that worked. And here is a shot that we recovered, finally, of the original gadget as it came out of that motel. There's the vest, there's the arm, there's the stabilized camera because it's rendered more inert, and there is a fiber optic viewfinder because there was no video viewfinding. So I had some help from American Optical in finding a way to see through that lens while I'm running around with a camera. More on that subject later. And I ended up in the movie business very quickly. It hit Hollywood like a thunderclap. This was probably my 7th or 8th film, a couple or 3 years later, right after getting an Oscar for the thing. I ended up working for Stanley Kubrick, which was an incredible dream for me. And it was a master class in using what amounted to a new instrument. I mean, here's something that is an invention that doesn't really work unless you have a skilled operator, like the violin doesn't really work unless you've done a violin workshop. The Steadicam requires making this thing work. And Kubrick helped me out greatly in that by doing 50 to 70 takes of things. So I came away from The Shining not only probably the best at the world at this thing, because there were only a handful of us at the time. And it would have been a circus stunt if I hadn't learned how to teach people how to do it. And that turned out to be the key to the success of the Steadicam, was running Steadicam workshops and helping people learn how to do it. There's track in this area.
It's great fun for me, partly because I always learn something. I think we're still figuring out how to do it.
Okay, now we're comfortable, we're enjoying it, we're shooting to the rear. And of course, proselytizing for it.
Nothing against dollies. I mean, I think they'd be very useful for delivering, for instance, groceries or campaigns at an old-fashioned party.
And I learned something that we teach our students, which is it matters how you look when you're doing this. I watched many of the participants here. If you look like you're suffering and you're in pain and you were just having a momentary episode of incontinence, they are distracted by that. And I learned we teach our students to have what we call the look. The look is a look of supreme insouciance and confidence and control, no matter what is going on physically with you. And I needed that look frequently, because I ended up working on 100 films all over the world, some in hair-raising circumstances. That was a real rope bridge. My role was to run on that bridge. Not very happily. Yeah, thank you. And of course, both of those films made me wish to not be an earthbound pedestrian sort of guy, and began the notion that if I could make a camera fly, that might be the next stage in the evolution of all of this. In both cases, Spielberg on the rope bridge and in Jedi, we talked about the ideal way to do it would be to fly over that stuff, to fly over the bridge and so on. Again, hard to believe with hindsight, but there were no flying cameras at the time. This is what I wanted to do. Sports are a great arena for it, of course, because it's less likely that CGI will steal our job in sports. It's real, it's happening. We've got to actually be there. And in 1984, we put together a team to try to fly what amounts to a flying Steadicam. This was actually shot at Live Aid the year later, but think back to computer technology's state of in 1984, and the computer that we chose to do this trick was an Osborne. The speed of that screen paint will tell you how challenging that was. It took actually a couple of iterations. I had to
Canada.
I had to enlist an old
Yes.
job of mine, which was doing ad-lib radio commercials. And the ad-lib radio commercials for Molson paid for the Skycam, little known fact, and paid for my wardrobe at the same time. But the Skycam is actually something that pleases me enormously. I love the idea of being close, of seeing this stuff wide angle, actually seeing the wide angle effect and letting you see that these bodies are coming at you, not shooting from the sidelines with telephoto lenses and so on. I love this shot. The thing goes 25 miles an hour. It can go from field level to 100 feet in 3 seconds. It's a really fun thing. And no computer graphics are required to make it work. I see that I got a reprieve on my time clock. That's great. That's really good. What was it that I did, Michael? Because I'd like to earn a couple more of them. That's good. I'm using it. I'm taking it all. Turn the sound up.
There was new camera technology to be found if you knew where to look. Camouflaged by the black line on lane 3, a tiny 2-foot-long submarine camera scuttled up and down the pool during every heat and final. Its inventor told us how it works.
And I sit here, sometimes wondering about whether I'm extremely intelligent or extremely dumb for having thought of this, and I run the thing back and forth with these handles. Well, you know what? Keep it simple, right? We were afraid that if it showed up with motors, that the Spanish electrical inspectors would chuck it right out of there if there were motors and cables going into the water. So I elected to run it by cranks, which was very intuitive and felt great. I ran it 19 miles by my count. I have the 50-meter world record of Moby King. But we did see some spectacular things, some wonderful things. I'll play this twice. By virtue of pulling away from the wall in clear water, at just the right angle of incidence, that reflecting underside of the water showed us the Botticelli-like image of that swimmer in reverse, going up overhead. And of course, once she broke the surface and it disappeared. But it did teach me to keep my eyes open on these things because, of course, that's what it's about. That's what I love about it is not so much the newsreel, geekiness of the things, but the fact that they show you stuff. They allow you to get places that are great. This is one called GoCam, and all of these things are driven by somebody's nearly impossible specification. It has to weigh 12 pounds, be invisible, be self-propelled, and so on. Usually after they've spent the bulk of their money on an unsuccessful one from a foreign country, I get the call to come in and do it inexpensively. But look at those two shots, the skating shot and the soccer shot. Both show you the sport from someplace you've never seen. Skating looks dangerous as hell at that low angle, 2 feet off the ice. And soccer just looks like a video game from that angle. Subsequent to that, I was asked, can I run a camera down a rail next to the divers? Oy, oh my God. And we had all of 3 months to do it. And the great thing about a job like that is you analyze all the possible hazards that can make it impossible. The look people, it has to look good. The safety people, it has to be safe, can't topple into the water. It can't make any noise because the divers would be distracted, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It can't get in the way of the other cameras and so on. And all of those things sort of make their own gravy. If you put together all those requirements, it has to be simple, it has to be cheap. They didn't have any money left. And of course, what do? Gravity. You drop the damn camera inside a tube with a window. And so when the diver leaves the platform, a guy who has hauled it up with a high-tech rope watches the pelvis of the diver, not the legs, because they get very confusing in diving. The legs go all over the place. But if you watch the pelvis, when the pelvis starts to drop, he lets go the camera. And you stop it, so help me, with a bungee cord so, in the tube. There's the tube, 53-foot window. Here's the hapless inventor. You have to keep the glass clean, of course. And here are the results. This is a shot that I love. I'm going to rush along here. I didn't realize, Michael, your clock counts backwards. That's not fair. So we will rush through these. Here's one called Flycam. This is the thing that could have done the Spielberg shot and the Lucas shot. And this is a wonderful gadget. It weighs 20 pounds, goes 90 miles an hour, and just rides on a single wire. Stabilized again, like by this Newtonian little Steadicam trick. It just earned Shot of the Games in Beijing. I do love this shot. They sent it 3,500 feet diagonally across the rowing venue and were able to fly as close as ever seen to these people in rowing and kayaking. This is the Steadicam Merlin. This is my favorite Steadicam of all time. This was done in the 21st century. And we're giving a couple of these things away. The Merlin is a wonderful little gadget. It stabilizes camcorders from a ½ pound to 6 pounds. Just a beautiful little machine. Again, it comes with a video explaining how it's done. But of course, the principles involved are simple. Here's a Lego version I made for my grandkids, you know, with an iPhone on it, you know. It's wonderful. It's a 19th century trick in a world infested with electronic tricks, and it really works quite well. I'm not giving this one away, though. This belongs to the kid. I have a new licensee, which I'm very grateful for. Let me hold up on that a second. My friend Eric Golden, who's a student of things in the entertainment business that he ports over into the industrial world, came to me and said, look, you have solved an ergonomic problem. This arm of yours lifts up to 70 pounds and renders things weightless. And he said there's a tremendous need in industry for flying tools for workmen who are injured. Here's a rivet squeezer that weighs 27 pounds. And workers are kind of tossed aside when they get shoulder injuries and so on, repetitive stress injuries. And with Eric's company, Equipoise, we've been applying the Steadicam arm, which is the weightless anti-gravity machine, and some new gimbal technology to flying tools for people. And one of the results is that they can use much heavier tools and get the work done much more quickly. So the workers themselves fed back to us, hey, give me the big grinder, you know, give me the big nut driver, because it happens quicker. It also extends the working life of people, which is very gratifying to me because they can work until they're older. People who are smaller can do some of these big jobs. There's another 27-pound grinder at Boeing. So this is a great excitement for me. My dad, RG, Rodney G. Brown, is still with us and still sailing with me. I've caught him listening to my album on his iPod. He's tickled, you know, with the inventing, of course. And one of my great joys, actually, is personal inventing. I actually have an invention with me. I have dozens of them in my life, and I highly recommend, among other things, that we encourage kids to learn to invent. We encourage everybody to do it, to invent good marriages and good lives and good machines and devices that you need. Here's an invention I have with me I use every day. I hate bringing reading glasses into a restaurant. I want reading glasses in my wallet, right? This is one of my favorite inventions. I don't suppose you can all see that. There it is. Oops. There you go. Go back to that slide. There's a close-up. Boink. There it is. My great passion for many years was a human-powered transportation device. I'll just show you one quick clip. This is not it. You know, you get sucked into these things. They seem logical. You have to try them. I mean, part of the game is the nerve and the daring to just do it and go for it, you know? That would have been right at home on that Gizmo newsreel, you know? But I will tell you the specification in case anybody finds this amusing, because I specified this many years ago, and I'm still on it, and we're sneaking up on it, and here is the spec. I want a human-powered transportation device, not motor-powered, not battery-powered. I want it to let you effortlessly go 6 to 9 miles an hour. It has to weigh under 8 pounds. It has to fit in a small briefcase, and it has to be able to be deployed immediately. And a grandmother carrying a child or groceries needs to be able to use it in complete safety. Pretty rigorous specification. Worse than the diving camera or the GoCam and so on. But I'm on the case on this, and I'm extremely excited. I have a licensee for it, and we're kind of closing in on something, and I assure you it's not that thing that you just saw. But that's what turns me on still, is looking after these things. Most of them still Newtonianly simple, you know, stuff that's kind of neglected in this century. And I have one quick, can I go over a minute, Michael? I have one clip, okay. Our demo for the original Steadicam was lost. This has track. So that one eye is looking through this 6-foot pipe into the lens, and the other eye is looking to see where you're running. So stairs were not a really good idea, particularly stairs that start and stop like the art museum steps. But we were there, you know, we parked up at the top. We got a slate. I said, Ellen, let's run down. This shot was from the original Steadicam demo, and the factory threw the negative out. And a year and a half ago, throwing out a can that was too heavy for what it was supposed to be, I found an intact print of the original demo with 30 impossible shots that sold the Steadicam in Hollywood. And this was the closing shot which the director of Rocky saw, Abelson, and that's why that shot is in Rocky. You run down, I'll follow you down, and then we're done, and I can go to LA. By God, she ran down those steps like a gazelle, and I had a burst of adrenaline. I followed her all the way down, and it was good. It was really good. It was better than the other stuff with the older rig. Even though it was lighter, it was more stable, which was amazing to me. And I didn't fall down, which was great. And then she ran back up. And I ran all the way back up after I kind of ran out of steam about the last landing. There are a lot of steps in the art museum. I mean, then that was just the art museum. Now it's an icon. Thousands of people run up and down that place, and it's become a symbol of something, personal achievement, or having accomplished something, or even just the dream of doing so. But just then, it was just us. And Ellen started to run, and I put the rig on, and I started to run down behind her. Well, I mean, here you go. I mean, this is what's happening now. People are coming from all over the world, you know? It's great. Tour buses full of wrestling fans pull up down here, and they all run up these steps. Look at this. Look. This is fabulous. Isn't that amazing? And that's why that shot is in Rocky. And it's a killer, because within a few months after that, I was chasing Stallone up those steps, because that film came on like that afterward, a little B picture in Philly. As they say, the rest is history. Thank you. Thank you very much. Great joy. Thank you.